Thank you for joining us, Dr. Wolff, and welcome to the Gateway of India Geoeconomic Dialogue 2017. The first question I had to ask you was regarding Germany's new development plan for Africa, which is being called Germany's Marshall Plan for Africa. What are the central pillars and objectives of this development plan?
Well, I think the first thing to be aware of is that Africa has not been very strongly represented in the G20. It is just South Africa, which does not represent Africa, but which is an African country and the only African country in the G20. And I think that is one reason why this so-called Marshall Plan or Compact with Africa has been framed as a G20 initiative. Africa's population will double in the next decades until 2050, and it will be the continent which will affect the global economic and also security environment to a very large extent, as in terms of demography, but possibly also in terms of economy, being a very dynamic place. And the awareness of this fact has, I think, driven this idea of making Africa a focal continent for the G20 to look at. And the major pillar, the major thrust of this initiative, I would say, is how to increase investment in Africa. The G20 has done in the past some initiatives with regard to infrastructure investment in Africa, but now the focus will lay on industrial investment of service industries in Africa, how to improve the environment, the business environment in Africa, policies for investment, and how to improve the readiness for German, European, global industries to invest in Africa and integrate African enterprises in global value chains.
Right. And just steering towards renewable energy, Germany has been a global leader in renewable energy technology and financing of renewable energy. What lessons do you think Germany can provide capital scarce and developing countries when it comes to financing of renewable energy projects?
Germany has been an early mover in this area in making the renewables sector a priority sector in energy generation. Actually, the German way of doing this is a very costly way. We have used a lot of public subsidies and are still using a lot of public subsidies in this area, although with decreasing volume, since, as we all know, renewables more and more are becoming a business case, and public subsidies are less needed as they were, let's say, 10 or 15 years ago, when Germany and other countries started to push for renewables investment. So what I think capital scarce countries now can learn, and what India, for example, is doing by having now a new solar project where 1 kilowatt is produced with 3 or 4 cents per kilowatt hour, and we can see this is really a business case. So what countries can learn from that is to embark on a renewable strategy which is more market-led than the very costly German strategy. Germany maybe can be credited for being a first mover and helping to get renewables moving, although in a very costly way, which is not a good example for capital scarce countries.
So is that the future then? Is the future a combination of government public spending and private investment for developing countries to meet their climate commitments as promised at the COP21 negotiations last year?
Well, in many areas, or in some areas, a combination of public and private funding might be needed. For example, in the transport sector, where public transport, as an example, is not a business case in most environments. So that means there has to be kind of a combination of public funding and possibly private funding. In other areas, such as in energy generation, I think this is a business case, and the best way would be to have it as a market-driven, private endeavor. Why? Because the combination of public and private funding is quite tricky. We do not know exactly how much public subsidies do we need to produce 1 unit of outcome. Because these markets or these mixtures of public and private are quite intransparent, and in some instances we even see a crowding out of private capital because there is too much public funding in the market. So we have to be very careful with the public-private combination. There has been talk on public-private partnerships, PPPs, for a long time. We did not come very far with this concept. So I think it is better to see and to delineate quite clearly where we have a business case, and there we can let the private sector fund and earn the profits, of course, with public regulation about standards, everything. And there are other areas where we need a combination of public and private funding, but again, there is a lot of research needed and a lot of more transparency needed, and also a lot of more transparent public bidding needed, as we have it now at present, where in my feeling we have a lot of waste of public funding subsidizing private enterprises.
All right, thank you for your interesting insights, and we hope you enjoy the rest of the conference.
My
Thank
pleasure.
you.
Thank you.